Sarah stares at her savings account on a Thursday night. The balance reads $23,400. She has been trying to reach $25,000 for almost 3 years. Every time she gets close, something happens. A car repair, a plane ticket she feels she deserves, a stretch of low motivation where the automatic transfer feels too painful. The number climbs, stalls, and sometimes even drops. She tells herself she will finish it next month. Next month looks a lot like this one. Megan is the same age and earns almost the same amount. She crossed $25,000 more than a year ago and kept going. Her lifestyle never looked dramatically different from Sarah's. The difference was mostly invisible and mostly mental. One of them is stuck in a strange loop that thousands of people recognize but rarely talk about. The other quietly moved through it. My name is Nico. Today we are going to examine the strange psychology of saving your first $25,000, why this specific number feels harder than the pure math suggests, what happens in the mind when you get close, and how the people who finally break through actually do it. First, the reality most people experience. The early stage of saving feels motivating. The first $1,000, $3,000, even $8,000 or $10,000 produces a clear sense of progress. You can see the balance move. You feel a small but real sense of control. Between $10,000 and $18,000, the feeling is still generally positive for many people. Then something shifts. Somewhere in the upper teens to low 20s, a large percentage of savers start to experience resistance that did not exist before. The balance no longer feels exciting. It starts to feel heavy, fragile, or strangely pointless. The final stretch toward $25,000 becomes disproportionately difficult. This is not a character flaw. It is a predictable psychological pattern. Let me break down the main layers of that pattern. Layer 1. The awkward zone problem. $25,000 sits in an uncomfortable middle ground. It is large enough to feel like real money, yet still small enough that it does not create obvious lifestyle freedom. It will not buy a house, fund a year of zero work, or dramatically change your day-to-day life. Because the reward still feels abstract, the brain struggles to assign it strong emotional meaning. Without a vivid personal reason, motivation weakens exactly when the remaining distance is smallest. Layer 2. Progress fatigue. After months or years of consistent effort, the cost of continuing starts to register more loudly than the benefit. Every skipped dinner out, every delayed purchase, every automatic transfer begins to feel like a sacrifice. The brain is excellent at noticing immediate costs and mediocre at feeling future benefits. The longer the effort continues without a dramatic external change, the louder the internal negotiation becomes. Maybe I can pause for a while. Maybe this is good enough for now. Layer 3. Identity friction. Many people still carry an internal identity of someone who is trying to get it together, or someone who is bad with money. Crossing $25,000 challenges that identity. Part of the mind resists the upgrade because accepting it requires a new self-story. It is surprisingly common for people to self-sabotage right before a milestone that would force them to see themselves differently. Layer 4. The approaching finish line effect. In many goal pursuits, motivation is highest at the beginning and near the very end. The middle is the danger zone. With saving, the end of the first $25,000 often arrives while the emotional payoff still feels distant. The result is a surge of resistance precisely when logic says you should push hardest. Sarah has lived inside all 4 layers. She has reached the low 20s multiple times and then watched the balance drift backward. Megan noticed the same urges rising as she approached the number. She treated them as predictable noise rather than commands. Here is what the successful ones tend to do differently. They attach the number to a concrete personal reason that goes beyond the number itself. Security for their family. Freedom to leave a job that is draining them. Proof that they can finish something difficult. The clearer and more emotional the reason, the more fuel it provides when motivation dips. They make the process more automatic and less emotional. The transfer happens before they can negotiate with themselves. Checking the balance too frequently often increases anxiety without increasing progress. Many people who break through review the number only once or twice a month. They expect the resistance instead of being surprised by it. When the familiar urge to pause or spend appears in the final stretch, they recognize it as part of the pattern rather than evidence that the goal is wrong. They redefine the milestone. Instead of "I need to reach $25,000 so I can finally relax," they treat $25,000 as the foundation that makes the next stage possible. The emotional weight shifts from finish line to starting line. Let's look at the practical side of why $25,000 still matters even though it is not life-changing money. For many households, it represents several months of runway. It can cover a serious car repair, a medical bill, or a period of reduced income without forcing high-interest debt. It is large enough to start producing meaningful compounding once invested, and psychologically it proves that consistency works. That proof often becomes the platform for the next $25,000 and the next. The people who clear this number usually find the following milestones feel somewhat easier. The internal resistance drops. The identity has shifted. The system is already running. I want to be honest about something. Life can still disrupt progress after $25,000. Job loss, family needs, health issues, and pure bad luck exist. The point is not that the number makes you invincible. The point is that the mental battle around this particular threshold is real and surprisingly common, and understanding it gives you a better chance of moving through it. Now let's go deeper into the emotional experience so it feels less personal and more universal when it happens to you. Many savers describe a subtle sense of dread as the balance climbs into the low 20s. The account starts to feel like something that can be lost, rather than something being built. The fear of going backward grows louder than the satisfaction of moving forward. This is loss aversion showing up in a new form. The higher the number, the more painful a step back feels, even if the step back is temporary. Others describe a flatness. The excitement that existed at $5,000 or $10,000 has faded. The remaining distance feels longer than the distance already covered, even though it is shorter. This is a classic progress perception distortion. Some feel an urge to celebrate early by spending a portion of the money. The brain looks for a way to mark the achievement before the achievement is technically complete. The celebration then resets part of the progress and restarts the cycle. These reactions are not evidence that you are broken. They are evidence that you are human and that your brain is doing what brains often do when a goal sits in an awkward middle zone for a long time. What helps most is reducing the amount of daily willpower the goal requires. Automation is the practical tool. A clear written reason is the emotional tool. Expecting the resistance is the psychological tool. I also want to speak to the people who have already crossed $25,000 and still felt nothing. That is common too. The milestone rarely produces the cinematic feeling people expect. The real reward is usually quieter, a slight reduction in background anxiety and a stronger belief that you can stick with long-term behavior. The feeling of "I did it" often arrives later, when you notice that the next $25,000 accumulated faster than the first. Let's walk through a few realistic scenarios so the pattern becomes concrete. Scenario 1. The almost there stall. A person reaches $22,000, $24,000, then experiences a series of necessary expenses that keep the balance from crossing the line. Some of the expenses are truly necessary. Others are preferences that suddenly feel urgent. The distinction becomes blurry exactly when the goal is closest. Scenario 2. The motivation crash. After 18 months of steady progress, the person wakes up one month and simply does not want to continue. The goal that once felt important now feels arbitrary. They pause the transfers, just for a while. A while turns into 6 months. Scenario 3. The identity rejection. The person gets within striking distance and then feels an unexpected discomfort with the idea of being someone who has $25,000 saved. It conflicts with an older self-image. They create a reason to use the money and return to more familiar territory. Megan recognized versions of all three. She had prepared simple if-then plans in advance. If the urge to pause appears, the transfer still goes through. If an unexpected expense appears, she uses a separate small buffer when possible instead of raiding the main goal. If the goal suddenly feels meaningless, she rereads the one-paragraph reason she wrote when she started. Sarah has not yet built those defenses. The same urges keep winning. The math of $25,000 is simple. The psychology is not. Treating the psychological side as real and predictable is one of the highest leverage moves available. I am not claiming that $25,000 is a magic number for every person in every situation. For some households, it is too low to create real security. For others, it is a stretch that takes many years. The specific threshold matters less than the pattern. There is often a zone where progress becomes emotionally harder even as the remaining distance becomes shorter. Recognizing that zone reduces its power. If you are currently in that zone, the most useful stance is calm expectation rather than self-criticism. The resistance is part of the process for a large number of people. It does not mean the goal is wrong. It means you are approaching a threshold that forces a small identity update and a final push of discipline. If you have already passed it, the most useful stance is to protect the system that got you there. Many people relax the habits once the first major milestone is cleared. The ones who keep going treat $25,000 as evidence that the method works, not as permission to stop using the method. Let me bring the two characters back for a moment. Sarah is still fighting the same mental patterns that appeared the last 2 times she got close. The number feels heavier the closer she gets. Part of her is looking for a reason to release the pressure. Megan felt the same heaviness. She had already decided that the feeling was not a signal to stop. It was a signal that she was near the point where the internal story changes. She kept the automatic transfers running and reduced how often she looked at the balance. 3 months later, the number was behind her, and the emotional weight had shifted. You become the kind of person who either keeps restarting every time the final stretch feels uncomfortable, or learns to expect the discomfort and continue anyway. The difference between staying stuck in the low 20s for years and crossing into real early momentum is often just understanding the strange psychology at work and refusing to let it have the final vote. If this video helped you recognize patterns in your own saving journey, hit the like button and subscribe. Drop your current savings or invested amount and your age in the comments. I read every single one. In the next video, we are going to look at what shifts once you clear $50,000 and why that next stage often feels different again. I'll see you there.